Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Farnborough International Air Show at this historic airfield about 30 miles southwest of London, one of the world's most important gatherings of defense, military, industry leaders and aircraft from all around the world on this, the 100th anniversary of the world's first independent Air Force, the Royal Air Force, founded in April 1918. This year is a year of commemoration for that great and historic force and Air Force on which all other Air Forces around the world have been modeled. Our coverage here is sponsored by Farnborough International and Leonardo DRS, and we're here at the BAE Superplex at the end of the airfield here at Farnborough to discuss the Future Combat Air Strategy, which is the new strategy that was unveiled by Prime Minister Theresa May and Defense Secretary Gavin Williamson. But a key part of that was the Tempest combat aircraft program, which was a black program funded for about £2 billion, pounds, in which BAE Systems is the lead contractor, joined by Leonardo Aircraft, joined by Rolls-Royce and MBDA, Europe's leading missile maker. And we're honored to have with us Andrew Kennedy, the head of strategy here at BAE, and Clive Morrison. Clive, I'm very sorry to mess up your name. We were making a joke earlier and I was going to refer to you by your joke name. And you've been working on the program as well from a technology standpoint. I want to start with you. This program really is, as Sash Tusa put it, this was the most consequential announcement at a Farnborough during his professional lifetime. Given that this was really a black program in many respects, enormous amount of work, wind tunnel work that was also done on shapes. I'm going to bet you 25 cents, Clive, this is a representational model and nothing vaguely like the real aircraft. I'll let you comment on that in a moment. Talk to us a little bit about the strategy, when you guys started doing this, and the amount of work you guys have put into this, and what ultimately you're trying to accomplish from a UK sovereignty perspective, given that this program is important to the nation to preserve its own organic aircraft design and combat systems capabilities.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the Combat Air Strategy, as you say, was published on Monday morning, and that was really a statement of intent from the UK government that, you talk about the RAF being in service for the last 100 years, that's been backed by UK industry, so effectively, we've been leading the sector for the last 100 years as a global power, and the Combat Air Strategy will hopefully position ourselves going forward for at least the next 100 years to maintain that position. And there were three main aims from the strategy. One of which was a statement of intent to international partners to say the UK is in the game. We want to go out and look for international partners. There is effectively the confidence for the investment community to say, if you've got a choice of where you're going to put the investment, come into the UK combat air sector, because this is a growth sector and it's something that we're going to sustain for many years into the future. And the third element of it was to act as effective inspiration for employees, current employees, and the next generation of software engineers and aerospace engineers. When they're coming out of university, they have a choice of where they're going, and there's lots of engineering jobs around the UK and elsewhere. We want them to come and work on this program.
I want to get to you, Clive, in a second, but let me follow this up. From a BAE strategy perspective, BAE and British industry has 20% of the Joint Strike Fighter. It's a key supplier. UK industries and industrial companies, and particularly BAE Systems, is on platforms all around the world, including a key supplier, one of the largest US military contractors, the American business. At the same time, you're trying to preserve sovereign capabilities. There are those in the company that have long bristled at the terms of Joint Strike Fighter, or the F-35 program, given that the United States doesn't give anybody access to the proprietary technology. In some cases, British engineers and even folks in MOD and elsewhere have said, look, it's kind of a one-way street. We provide the systems that go in there, but we don't have much access and insight, even though we're a tier 1 player on it. Is there a message here to be delivered in terms of what's happening with this program that, and how strategically do both of these coexist? Because at some point, folks in the Pentagon can regard this as, well, wait a minute, they're not going to buy more of our stuff to develop their own stuff. Even if that might be part of the message, it becomes kind of a difficult narrative. Walk us through strategically, how to think about this problem from a BAE Systems standpoint.
So I think what we have to understand is the BAE Systems position on F-35 came about from a large raft of the intellectual property that we generated through a number of programs prior to that, the Typhoon, the Tornado, the Harrier, and other work and investment that we'd done. So the F-35 is great business for the company, but what it doesn't actually necessarily do for us is create the long-term future. We're not creating the intellectual property from the F-35 program that we can then transfer necessarily onto other programs but we are still doing really, really good work on that program, and they can very much coexist with Tempest and the work that we're going to be doing through the initiative that was announced on Monday morning. So what we really want to be able to do from this program is to generate the intellectual property that we're able to own and exploit, and potentially then that ensures that in the future we are going to be a really, really good partner for the United States as well. So we can continue, like we've done, as I say, on the Tornado and the Harrier and the Typhoon. If we generate some of the capabilities on this program, we can then perhaps partner again with the US in the future.
And as you look at that partnership future, you have the French and the Germans that have announced their program to develop a combat aircraft. There's a partnership that BAE has with Turkey, for example, to work on the Turkish combat aircraft program. And you guys have had a terrific, in fact, you were a large stakeholder in Saab for a very long period of time. And then you have that access as well. Talk to us about how this is going to work out. Does this become, most people don't realize that the Eurofighter design was actually the British BAE Systems design that everybody adopted. France was part of the program at that point, broke off to do the Rafale. How do you see this all working? Is it the guys who actually put the most skin in the game up front that become the guys who end up driving the train, a little bit like Eurofighter?
Not at all. I mean, again, within the Combat Air Strategy, where we've talked, there's a whole chapter about international partnering, and what the UK wants to do and what BAE Systems wants to be able to do is be a true international partner. So we want to be able to, at the start of the program, engage with a number of companies, whether they are new allies or traditional allies, work together perhaps on 12-month concepting kind of studies, and then make sure that whatever it is that we're producing that comes out of those studies and that we take into service in the future is something that meets the requirements of both of the UK but also of our international partners.
Clive, I want to come to you. It's pretty stunning, and I think you guys have a lot to be very, very proud of. Talk to us a little bit about, you guys have been working on this for a while through a variety of different program streams and tracks. Friends of mine tell me you've been doing quite a bit of wind tunnel work as well. Talk to us about some of the technology streams that you're bringing together on this and the kind of jet and capability, where is this aimed at the market? Larger than an F-35? Talk to us about where this would fit in an overall strategy, because UK is still acquiring F-35 aircraft. Sir Stephen Hill, your chief of the RAF, told us, hey, 138 is the number and that's what the force is building to. We're going to talk to Philip Jones, First Sea Lord as well, and he is as eager as Cass is to get those airplanes. Talk to us about the kind of capability sets that Tempest would bring to the fore, and what market itch would it be scratching ultimately?
This is not, we don't see this as a competitor to F-35. From our National Air Force, the Royal Air Force, which you've quite rightly said, first independent Air Force, we see this more as a complementary capability into the future. So the last SDSR in this country outlined a view that Typhoon would go on until about 2040, maybe a wee bit longer. So we feel we need to understand now what sort of capabilities, what sort of technologies, what sort of systems will be required in order to take over from Typhoon in that sort of time period. Given that certainly for our own national customer and for many other customers as well, F-35 is really only entering service now. It'll have a long and very capable service life. The force mix between what we are currently viewing as the Typhoon F-35 force mix on a national perspective and the force mix between this concept, as you see behind, or what comes out of this concept work that we're doing, it may or may not look exactly like the thing you see behind you, will be effectively F-35's partner in the Royal Air Force from the 2040s onwards. So we don't see it as a competitor to F-35, it's a complementary capability in terms of the Royal Air Force and some of the other European air forces. We've done some market analysis around the rest of the world, and clearly there are a number of elements to that in terms of where you position yourself. The United States, with its capabilities and with its immense buying power, will put itself in a position, we believe, which we will slightly discriminate ourselves of. That is not to compete. We look to the future where we are continuing to cooperate and collaborate with the United States in an operational sense. So therefore, whatever we do needs to be complementary with what the United States is also fielding.
And one of the things that Cass mentioned was that historically the curve has been ever more capable aircraft are ever more expensive to the point that they become unaffordable for me to buy them in large enough numbers. I need numbers to fill out my force. So everybody feels that cost pressure. Every chief executive we've talked to here has talked about how we manage to take cost down. From your guys' perspective, when you have a demanding customer in a nation that has global ambition, what are the major muscle movements, intellectual processes, or hard processes you're using to try to pack for example, Typhoon performance in a jet that costs significantly less than a Typhoon to allow Cass and his generations of his successors to buy them in far larger numbers.
So you're right. So Stephen has challenged us to reduce the cost of procurement and ownership, and that's a challenge we welcome. The curve in the past 30 to 40 years is only showing an upwards trend, and if we continue on that curve, we will hit Norm Augenstein's law of one aircraft for the entire military of a country.
Clive, you get a bingo because you're the first person who's invoked Augenstein's law, on demand. Well done.
I think it's several things we want to play into this to start to back off that cost and time curve, which is absolutely critical, and we take Sir Stephen's challenge quite rightly as something we should do. First of all, it'll be manufacturing processes. There'll be we see manufacturing processes being developed now and which we are beginning to bring into being, some of which are here today if you wander around, which shows, we hope, a far cheaper and more efficient way of generating the manufacturing system. Secondly, I think from an avionic and under the skin process of a vehicle like this, we're not starting with a clean sheet of paper. As Air Commodore Link Taylor, head of the RCO, and ACOS Capdell said, we intend to spiral as well as look at new technological capabilities. That we hope will fully exploit those technologies we are now developing. There will be new ones, and that's part of the Team Tempest remit, is to look at what those new technologies might be and how we mature them and bring them into the space. How much of that can we use commercial activities in order to bring the cost down? Also the processes, how do we streamline our processes? Building aeroplanes in the past has been a very bureaucratically heavy process. We've all been involved in that. Can we streamline those processes so the time scale is reduced? Time has been a big cost driver in all of these issues. If we can reduce the time scale, then by virtue of that, we will start to reduce the cost. Do we know exactly how we're going to do that today? No, we do not. And that is part of the Tempest remit, to start to understand what are the big levers and drivers that allow us to reduce that cost, make these assets within a system of systems far more affordable through life, not just at the procurement end of the telescope.
That was a very amen moment there, because I think, I think UK justifiably deserves credit for being one of the first nations to put sustainability up front in all contract discussions, so that you don't end up with something that gives you the nth degree of performance but also ends up costing an enormous amount of money over time. There have been a number of American programs that have been optimized for maximal performance. Then at the end of the day, everybody's like, wow, but it's very expensive to maintain. As you look at the radar cross, obviously it's a stealthy aircraft, or at least you're shooting for a stealthy aircraft, and you guys have done a tremendous amount of work alone as BAE Systems, but also with your French partners on the unmanned aircraft program, where tremendous leaps have been made from a European perspective in developing stealth capabilities. Are you guys shooting for a radar cross-section that's just sort of lower than an average aircraft and not quite an F-35, or are you trying to bat in the F-22, F-35 league and get it to that degree of cross-section? You're smiling, so which one of you should I go to for this one?
I'll go for the technical one.
The answer is, that's the question we are asking ourselves. Clearly, within the survivability equation, signature control is part of that equation. Effectiveness and efficiency and delivering the capability is dependent upon many factors. So part of the Tempest remit is to look at that operational analysis, the operational requirements, and the concepts that will deliver that into the future. Looking to the future in terms of threat is difficult, as we all know. That crystal ball in 2040 is probably a little furry and fuzzy, so we have to make some assumptions and work forward with that. Do we at this moment in time believe stealth is a factor in the equation for the design of a next generation combat aircraft, or rather perhaps more accurately signature control? Absolutely. Will it be the dominant factor? We don't know. So we're going to ask ourselves those questions, try to understand the environment, look at the operational requirements, and look at concepts that meet it within the most affordable and efficient way. So is there an answer today? No, there's not an answer today, or we don't have an answer today. That's why we're doing this work, to understand.
Let me ask one question, and I want to get to you, Andy, but from a payload perspective, one of the core things is, what do you ballpark want it to do, right? What's the range, payload, and then the other things can flow from that roughly, right? What's your rough speed corner? That drives gas. you want more munitions capability, greater range. Do you guys have any of those parameters sketched out even in rough manner so that when you put pencil to pad, you guys know how to form it out from that?
I think we have a view, we have a framework. Whether that framework is right for tomorrow, we don't yet know. A lot of I think will depend on issues like the effectors, the weapons. Will they bring and confer a level of performance and functionality, which means arguably we may be able to back off the overall aircraft performance. So I think we've pitched it not far off where aerodynamic performance is today, but we fully expect that through our processes of understanding the environment and the operational analysis and the concepts, that may change our mind about how we deliver that. I'm very aware that we are often accused of fighting yesterday's wars in terms of how we develop the next set of combat aircraft capability. We're trying not to do that. What we want to do is understand where those key discriminators are. So I guess the real answer is we have some baseline assumptions which are probably not far off where the Typhoon capability is today in terms of aerodynamics. We would hope to improve on some of those, but other areas we may be able to back off and give ourselves more flexibility in the conceptual designs, because other elements of the system will be able to deliver that capability without necessarily having to go all the way to that aerodynamic performance. But the bottom line is that's why we're doing the work to understand.
Andy, what's next from your standpoint from a strategic perspective? You know, sort of what's next for you guys now that you sort of sat there, you know, stroking the cat and having come up with the program? I wanted people to have that image, you know.
Please don't. No, if only it was that relaxed. I think the key elements coming up in the next couple of years, I think, are very much to engage with the international partners and see if we can, you know, create some kind of construct that has mutual benefit to all the partners, and that's the absolutely fundamental element of what we're going to be trying to do. As I said earlier on, it is engaging with the partners at the earliest possible stages to make sure that we produce some kind of system that meets the requirements of everyone. And the other part then is also sitting down, sort of building on Clive's earlier answer, sitting down in kind of the requirements definition phase to make sure that we have an open and honest conversation between industry and between government, and that is set out in the combat air strategy that we're going to be able to do that. So that if a requirement is set that says it needs to go X miles an hour, and actually industry can come back and say, you know, if it's X minus 1 miles an hour, it'll be significantly cheaper. Do you really need it to go that speed? That's the kind of open and honest discussion that we'll have, and hopefully from that will then produce that kind of affordable product that we've been talking about.
And Clive, you know, one of the parts of this is to drive it very, very quickly.
Yes.
Let's not take 22 years to develop the airplane.
Absolutely.
So what kind of hard gates are there to transfer what Andrew said, which is, hey, here's the strategic intent. You know, what's the timetable everybody's playing against to try to deliver capability on a ramp? You know, what's that? Has Kaz or anybody put that stick in the mud that says, hey, here's what I want to buy?
Not hard numbers in that we are pushing, and this is obviously a discussion between ourselves and the national governmental authorities and the MOD. We want to be in the market when the market is ready for a vehicle, for a capability like this. Our internal view says we believe that is probably in the late 2030s, early 2040s. So everything drives back from that. So there are a number of gates which I'm probably not at liberty to discuss at the moment, right. But that's where we're shooting for. We do not want to be 25, 30 years down the road still wondering when we're going to put a capability like this into service and out into the marketplace.
And Andrew, one last question, which is, has everybody decided what part BAE is bringing to the equation, what part Leonardo is bringing, or is this point kind of, hey, we're all in the room together as we do this?
I mean, we obviously have the broad areas where the companies are specialised in, but actually a lot of that, you know, nailing down that kind of work share is very much dependent, again, on those international discussions that we're going to have. Because obviously it depends on which countries you partner with, depends on where their areas of expertise lie as well, and what their requirements are going to be from any program.
Andrew Kennedy, Head of Strategy for BAE Systems, Clive Morrison, operational requirements, and a man who's at least very technically savvy on this program. Guys, thanks very much. Best of luck. We look forward to covering you over the coming years, and it's going to be really, really great to see how much this airplane differs from the real one when it hits the ramp, because when you went back and you looked at the stuff that became Typhoon, it looked very, very different than what Typhoon looked like.
Thank you.
Best of luck to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.